The Lubavitcher Rebbe had a few. He had, I wouldn't call it an obsession, but he had took a particular interest in the icons of Yiddishkeit. Meaning, Lubavitch has their own menorah shape, right? Everyone knows Lubavitch has the pointy, the V-shaped menorah as opposed to everyone else. Lubavitch has the Lubavitch Rebbe was very against the Magen David, the Star of David. No shuls have that. Lubavitch Rebbe held that the Luchas.
Anything or
No. Lubavitch Rebbe was very into the shape of the Luchas. The Luchas, if you've been to any shul, this one rather has a square one on it. But if you've been to most shuls, the art of the Luchas has that like rounded, like the Twin Peaks, right? Like the rounded top of the Luchas. This one rather has a square Luchas on the thing. Now, for hundreds of years, the Luchas went unchecked. It always had that, that peak on the Luchas. That's how it went. If you look at any old Svarim, like on the Sharblat, that have these different, decorations, they look like that. You look at any old, Arayna, like Aron Kodesh from, let's say, Italy. We have some still, there's one in Torah Links, actually. You look at like these old Aron Kodesh, the decorations always have this double arch, the Luchas. That's how it was. Lubavitcher Rebbe, at some point in his life, in the 70s, I think, took a particular interest in eradicating this Luchas art. And he made a big deal about it. So I want to talk a little bit about what the discussion is. If there's taka difference between the rounded luchas or the square luchas, where they both come from, and maybe there's difference in luchas rishonis, luchas shnius. That's really what triggered when we were reading the parsha last week. Luchas rishonis, luchas shnius. I started thinking about this, but here's the story. Let me start like this. And there's a guy, a rabbi in Eretz Yisrael, a kiruv rabbi. He's like a college campus rabbi. His name is Rabbi Cheskel Sefer. Today he presents, he's a lange weiße Bart. He looks very Lubavitch. He actually started off in Panovich. He learned by Rav Shach and all the Panovich yeshivas. At some point he found the Lubavitcher library in Bnei Brak. I think, if I remember his bio correctly. He started learning some Sefer Chassidus and some things, and it really connected to him. He fell in love with it. And he became a Heisa Lubavitcher Chassid with all the zeal of a convert, Became a Heisa Lubavitcher Chassid. He became a kiruv rabbi on different campuses. Eventually, I think like in the 2000s, he had a falling out with Lubavitch, with like main Lubavitch or whatever, over the Mishachis stuff, over that. So I don't know exactly what his exact opinion was and what the exact fight, but he had some sort of falling out with parts of Lubavitch. Now, he put out a kuntras. He put out a few svarim. One of his svarim that he put out is a sefer called Al Chet HaEagle. It's a play on the words Al Chet HaEagle. It's Al Chet HaEagle, eagle meaning the circle. Al Chet HaEagle, and it's to prove that Lubavitch Rebbe's position that luchas are supposed to be squared and not supposed to be rounded is the authentic and proper position, and anyone who makes them rounded is making a mistake. He put out this whole country called Achet Eagle. I tried hard to get it. I have not been able to find it. I only have like quotes from it. I never got to find the actual sefer. This is the country that he put out. Now, so what is this shmuz? What's this about? So there's a Gemara in Bava Basra on Daf Yidalad Amud Aleph that talks about the dimensions of the Aron. It says what the internal, cavity, the internal space in the Aron, what it was. If it was 6 by 6 by 3 or 9 by 6, I'm saying them wrong. I have to look at the Gemara, but the Gemara is calculating the exact amount of the inches, so to speak, tvachim that are in the Aron. Now the Gemara starts figuring out how did they fill up that space. The Gemara says they put the luchas that took up X amount of space over here and over here, lying down flat, and then they put the shivri luchas, the broken luchas from the first luchas, and then they put the Sefer Torah. There was a Sefer Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu wrote that went into the Aron also. And the Gemara starts calculating how much space each one of them took. Was there a need for finger space to be able to pull the Sefer Torah out? Now basically the way the Gemara is calculating it is laying down the luchas flat, right, like this. Like laying down the luchas in the Aron like this, like 2 tablets side by side in the Aron. That takes up X amount of space, plus the Sefer Torah and whatever. Now, says the Lubavitcher Rebbe and says others, this he's not the only one to say, is that if you see the Gemara Bava Basra is figuring out, calculating exactly the square inches of the internal cavity of the Aron and saying how it was filled up from here to here, whatever. So clearly there was no gaps, right? It means it was a full Aron. You filled it up from here, from every spot. Now he says if the luchas would be shaped, square on the bottom and then rounded on the top, so there's all sorts of gaps in the Aron. And why would the Gemara talk about it like Imamish filling the Aron up, like every centimeter of the Aron? You're not filling up the Aron. There's gaps, between all the shivri luchas. So the Sefer Torah, the Gemara itself addresses and says that there's a gap so that you can pull it out. And shivri luchas, I guess you could tighten them up. You could, what do you say?
Why does it matter to us?
With the Aron?
Or the luchas?
So it doesn't really. The honest truth is it doesn't really. Meaning it only matters if you think it's a big deal to have the wrong decoration. Meaning, I don't. You will. Well, if we'll get to it, I'll show you some chuvas from different places. We talked about it. A lot of their reaction is exactly like you're saying. It's like, okay, whatever, like big deal. And who cares? Do it round, do it square. Like you're absolutely correct about that. That many poskim's posture to this question was like, I don't know, you're making a big deal out of nothing. That definitely was a lot of poskim's posture. We'll get to it. Moshe Sternbach, Menashe Klein, others. We'll see, but. It just...
you don't think Hashem made the luchos in a certain way?
No, he did, but does it matter how you put it on the... Let's say it's a guesstimation. Let's say it's an estimation of what the luchos look like. Does that really matter? I mean, the stakes are not that high, so to speak. And yeah, this is the primary raya that like it starts from, is this Gemara Babasa that talks about filling up the Aron to this extent, which seems to imply that the Aron was full. There was no gaps in the Aron. That's what the implication is. So this is like a very basic raya. Now, there are other rayas also. Lamashal, there's a Zayar in Parshas Yisroi, that says as follows. The Zohar describes the luchas and says like this. The luchas were 2 tablets of exactly equal proportions that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made. What exactly the material that the luchas was made out of is a big nidin, big machlekes midrashim, 5 or 6 different shitas in Chazal, what exactly the luchas, what material the luchas were made out of. But the luchas were made by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're talking about the luchas Rishainis. And they were 2 exactly equal tablets that when you put them near each other, it appeared like it was one. That's how the Zohar describes it. I'll read you the lashon of the Zohar. The Zohar says, "Train havei u'mischazian kechad." They were 2 different pieces, but it looked like one. Now I ask you, if you take the luchas and each one is rounded off on the top, and you put them near each other, it doesn't look like one, right? On the top, you can see there's a gap between. You have like that heart shape on the top. You can see there's a clear gap. So from the way the Zohar is describing the luchas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu made, again, it seems to imply that the luchas were mamish, equal to each other. They were full square boxes. That's a mashmayis from the Zohar. Additionally, there's another interesting mashmayis. Is Rabbeinu Bechai in Parshas Yisroi on the parsha of Matan Torah. Rabbeinu Bechai says something interesting. He says the pasuk says sham loy chayk u'mishpat. There Hashem gave Klal Yisrael chayk u'mishpat, like the laws and the dinim. Now he says the gematria of chayk of Cheskov, this is Rabbeinu Bechai, a Rishon. Cheskov is 108. He says if you take the dimensions of the luchas, which was, I think, 6 by 6, and you figure out the square inches, square tvachim of it, it comes out to 108. Like, so some loy is that the dimensions of it was 108, and then he finds another gematria for 216, which is them together, and he does this whole, now, for whatever he wants it for, whatever his gematria is, whatever his rem is that the Rabbeinu Bechai is trying to say. Now, again, do the math. I don't have all the instruments properly over here to exactly figure this out, but if you round off the tops, you're going to lose a certain amount of dimensions on each corner of the luchas. It's not going to equal the gematria is going to be off, and it's not going to be off with just 1 or 2 kailals and tricks to make gematrias work. It's going to be off. It's going to be 97 square tvachim. It's going to be the wrong number. So Rabbeinu Bechai again is a raya that you see Rabbeinu Bechai seemed to learn that the luchas were square. This seems to be the meaning, the starting posture of the Gemara Baba Basra, the Zohar, the Rishonim. This seems to be in all likelihood. L'chayr the Lubavitch Rebbe was correct in his assumption that this is not how the luchas were, and now whether or not it's important to change them is a different shmuz. That's what you have the kunshus from Cheskel Sefer Al Chat Eagle, that this is mamash like a wichtige tzvek to change this and things. So how did it come to be then, Taka? If the luchas were not like that, so how did it come to be that the luchas all ended up round on everybody's artwork? So Yesh Imrim, some say that it was because that's how the Goyim did it. Meaning the artwork was done by major artists in Italy in those days. They decided for like the way they liked it, it looked better, like curved. They liked the shape better. They made it like that, and that caught on. That's what some say, which is like a simple explanation. Others are going to say that there's a real reason for it, and that's what I want to get to. Now, I have a shtickle raya. This is my raya to the sugi over here. I think is interesting. I have a raya. There's a shaila in Hilchas Mezuzah. It's a Gemara Menachos in the Flamen Gimel that talks about, the Gemara says, you're not allowed to hang a mezuzah kamin nagar, like a nail, like nailed in. Now there's machlekes rishonim what that means, kamin nagar. Yes? Machlekes rishonim. Rashi says kamin nagar means you don't nail it in straight, meaning the mezuzah is horizontal, right? Like horizontally inserted into the thing, that's not allowed. Taisvis, Rabbeinu Tam, says exactly the opposite. Taisvis says kamin nagar means vertically. Now each one is taiching. Taisvis says nagar, the way you bang a nail in, is a vertical, you bang it in. And Rashi says, no, nagar means like, stuck in. This is displayed. So this is the Machlekes Rashi Taisus and how to learn the Gemara. The Gemara says, you don't do it this way, we don't do it this way. Machlekes Rashi says how you do it. Now, Taisvis brings kamarayas, that laying down is the proper way to do it. Rashi says you can't do it laying down, you can only do it standing up. Now we know, everybody knows, Klal Yisrael does a pshara, right? Klal Yisrael for the most part. Klal Yisrael for the most part, not Sfardim, I'm sorry. I shouldn't say Klal Yisrael, you're right. Ashkenazim, non-Gronix Ashkenazim, do this pshara, which comes from Taisvis. I think that's the accurate way to say it. Non-Gronix Ashkenazim do it, that we do it on some sort of, pshara between vertical and horizontal. Sfardim do like the Beis Yosef Shita, like the Mechaber Shita, they do straight, which is, I think, the Rambam Shita as well. Now, Taisvis, when he wants to bring a raya to his opinion, that laying down is the proper way to do it, Taisvis says, take a look at the Gemara Basra that describes how the luchas were laid into the Aron, and if you're looking at the Gemara that describes the dimensions, clearly the luchas were laid down flat into the Aron. Luchas were not standing up in the Aron. So you see that the respectful and bakavidik way to lay something down, to put something, to park something, to put something, home, is to lay it down. That's the way to do it. So it says Rabbeinu Tam that Memela, that's why Kaminaga means don't do it like this. Of course do it like this. This is the proper way to do it, because that's the most respectful way to lay something down. Now, Frek Taisvis, that's the Zizig Taisvis. Now, Taisvis says, this is what Taisvis says. Now, Rabbeinu Tam is quoted elsewhere in the Mordechai. Elsewhere, Rabbeinu Tam said, they asked him, if you think this is true, so then how come we put Sefer Torah standing up? The Sefer Torah in the Aron should also be laid down. Why are you standing up, Sefer Torah? Let them be laid down. And Rabbeinu Tam says, Im ezke livnois beis haknesses, the Mordechai quotes him, if I'll be zeicha to build the beis haknesses, archiv es ha'aron. I'll be marchiv the Aron so that I could lay it down. That's what Rabbeinu Tam says. Meaning, if I'll have the privilege to build my own shul, Rabbeinu Tam never built a shul, he just, lived in shuls that existed. He says, should I have the privilege and the opportunity to build myself a shul, I will make sure that my Aron will be properly laid down. As I said to Rabbeinu Tam. Now, this is Grada. There is a place that has Sefer Torah laid down this way. The Belz Beis Medrash. When the Sar Shalom, not this one also has it. But when the Sar Shalom, the first Belzer Rebbe in Belz, built a beautiful Beis Medrash, the one that this one's modeled after, the big white, Beis Hamikdash is modeled after his. He built an Aron that allows the Sefer Torah to be laid down. That's how he did it, right? In Belz now, so they have drawers. It's stacked up and down, laying down each other. He did this way. It's a big mystery why the Sar Shalom did this. So there's like a lot of different theories. Most of them are not true. I'll share them with you anyhow. The one theory is that the Bach, who was the Rav of Belz hundreds of years before the Sar Shalom, he held like Taisvis, like Rabbeinu Tam. He's supposed to make it laying down. It's not true. The Bach doesn't hold like that. Bach brings both days. So some say he was, an accommodation to the Bach. Others say something even more interesting is that the Sar Shalom, the first Belzer Rebbe, was a Gilgul of Rabbeinu Tam. And therefore, like Rabbeinu Tam says, L'chashe ezke, when I'll be zeicha archvenu, so the Sar Shalom was Mekayim it. Okay, Yachol Liot, I don't know.
All shul come from
Belzer?
and
Yeah, it's layers and layers. I have a whole sefer at home about. So we don't know. Even in there, nobody really knows. The real thing that they seem to say is that the Belzer Rebbe was makbid on anything that in Hilchos Beis HaKnesses there's a machlokes about. Meaning, there's a lot of things in Hilchos Beis HaKnesses machlokes about. Anything there's a machlokes about, he tried to be accommodating with both shitas. So, Mashal in Belz, his big shul, in the shtiblach, like the small side rooms, the Aron Kodesh were regular. Sefer Torah stood erect in the Aron Kodesh. Now, you could say again that that's just for practicality purposes. Those were smaller rooms where the Aron Kodesh could only take up, a foot off the wall, and there wasn't room for a 3-foot Aron Kodesh sticking out. But there are those who say the Belzer Rebbe was makbid to accommodate all the shitas, so like that. What do you say?
Modern day, it's the same.
Yeah, modern day Beis Medrash is the same way. The main Beis Medrash has laying down Sefer Torah. The modern day Beis Medrash is not to scale. It's much, much larger. But it's done the exact same way. All the Minhagim are the same. It's done the same way, and they have that taka. The Shtiblich have regular standing up Sefer Torah, and the primary Beis Medrash has them laying down. Now this is the Shita Machlekes Rashi and Tam. This is the obscure minig of Belz, based on whatever it is. Now there's an interesting tshuva from the Radvaz, and this is the part that I think is relevant to our discussion. The Radvaz has a shaila. The Radvaz is as follows. He says, the shaila is as follows. Sha'alta lama nagu lahamid Sefer Torah ma'omid. How come we're noig to stand the Sefer Torah upright in the Aron Kodesh? Ale mushkavu yosir toiv shekena yaluchas ba'aron. Wouldn't laying down be a better procedure for it? Because that's how it was in the Aron. Says the Radvaz, a few different svaras, he says. I looked around, he says, he brings Taisus, Rabbeinu Tam, V'chulu. I looked around and says, nobody does this. The Belz Beis Medrash wasn't built yet when the Radvaz was writing this. He says, nobody lays down the Sefer Torah. He says, you want to know why? I'll tell you the distinction between the Sefer Torah and the Luchas. He says, Lefichach nirali, the Bishlam Luchas, Lav Lekriya Kaimi. Luchas were not meant to be read from. Luchas are tablets. They're not meant to be read from. They were meant to be put down, laid to rest. They're not meant to be read from. Lefichach mushkavas ba'aron. They're laid down in the Aron. That's the respectful way. Aval Sefer Torah lekriya. It's meant to be taken out and read from. It has to be laying in a way that you're ready to read from it, which is why the Sfardim, this is more indicative of the way the Sfardim read from a Sefer Torah, which is how the Radvaz would have read from a Sefer Torah, meaning standing up. The way we read it, we kind of read from it mushkav. So this svara was like doesn't really hold so much water. If you read from the Sefer Torah standing up, like Sfaradim do, then this svara that Radvaz is saying makes a lot more sense, and that is the minig that he's going with. That's svara number one that he says. Svara number two, what do you say?
The Sefer Torah in the Aron is major steer.
Is laying down. I know. Sefer Torah in the Aron is laying down.
Yeah, it's also connected to Sfardim.
Well, the way they have it.
Yeah.
Okay. And yeah, so then he says the second svara. He says, "V'su bishlam aluchas manach lehu ki yurchayu arachvan v'le'achudan." They're laid down on their width and not on their pointy side. Meaning the luchas, do the luchas. Luchas, imagine like a stack of papers, right? This is what the luchas look like. This is the thing. This is very narrow. So to stand it on like a very narrow part of the luchas, that's not bakavadik. You lay it down flat, you put it to rest. That makes sense. That's what it says. Mashengen Sefer Torah is this is a good way to hold it. This is the proper way to hold it. This is just sloppy. That's the second svara. And his third svara, he says like this. He says the second thing is luchas don't have a top and a bottom. Kol heicha de manachlu nikr shaper the michalav areim haynikr. This he's leaning on a medrash that says that luchas had a nest. You could read them from any direction. But the luchas, he says, don't have a top and a bottom. The luchas are a tablet, they're square. So a square thing that doesn't have a top or a bottom, you put it down flat. A Sefer Torah has a top and a bottom, right? You read one direction, top to bottom. Something that has a top to bottom, it's more derech eretzik to put it standing up, where its top is up and its bottom is down. That's a svara that he says. Now, these are the three svaras that Daz says. Now, not all of them are applicable to modern day in the way we have it. Now, I was thinking like this. According to the third svara that the Daz is saying, that the reason why Sefer Torah stands up is because it has a top and a bottom. The luchas don't have a top and a bottom. That's why they lay down. If the luchas had a crown on them, if each luach was rounded off on the top, then it has a top and a bottom. Then the svara would not hold true anymore. Then the proper way to store it would be.
That was part of the nace.
What did you say?
That's part of the nace. Every time you turn
the top switched also. That's a chiddush. Meaning, I think if anything, what the Radvaz is an indication to, the way the Radvaz is describing it is an indication that the luchas were square. Luchas don't have a top and a bottom. So taka doesn't make sense to say, stand it erect. It doesn't have a top and a bottom. As opposed to Sefer Torah, which has a top and a bottom. That's the proper way to display it, is to stand it erect. I think this Radvaz, I didn't see anybody shtal v'suba. I think this Radvaz, at least in his third svara, is a good raya to the idea that luchas are square. Luchas are not meant to be rounded off on the top. Now, so what is the tzad to round them off on the top? So some say comes from Chassidish svarim, that we know that when Klal Yisrael got Matan Torah, they got ksarim, right? We got crowns. So originally, the way people depicted the luchas was two luchas, and with the crown of Nasa and Nishma, one on top of each luach, because he wanted to display like the grandeur of the Maimid. You put the Nasa and Nishma crowns on luchas, and over time, he says people forgot that it was luchas with crowns on top of them. Two different pictures. They're really displaying two different things. One's displaying the luchas that Klal Yisrael got, and one's displaying the crowns that Klal Yisrael got. Over time, it just like kind of meshed into each other, and the crown got molded onto the top of the luchas. And the luchas got a crown themselves, and it turns into the shape. This is what it's a svara, potentially. Now, others say taka mamash not important, like the Mechas Yitzchak. Chuvas of Ramesh Sternbach and Menashe Klein, mamash not important. They rather say like they encourage shuls not to fight about it. There's enough things to fight about in shuls. You don't need to fight about this also. Whatever he's talking about a shul particularly that reached out to him about this. He says he brings from the Stipler that you should make the luchas square. The Stipler God was very also into the icons. Stipler was very, very particular about symbols. Stipler had a major aversion to crosses. Like you read Archis Rabbeinu, the Stipler contacted the electric company in Bnei Brak to switch out the electric poles that ran through the back of his building because the way the wires hung on the pole looked like a cross there. Stipler was very, very phenomenal with the icons. Stipler had them change the curtains in the mechitza in Letterman's shul because in the crochet work of the mechitza he saw crosses. Like the Stipler was you read in Archis Rabbeinu, there's a whole bunch of these stories with him. He was very particular, like chairs, the backs shouldn't be the Stipler was very particular about this. So Stipler also, unsurprisingly, took a strong position about this and said that lucha should be square. That's important. It's important to him that it should be accurate. But L'maisa Moshe Shneimar quotes this, and he says that it's not, hayos, this is a minig that's been done for hundreds of years. This is how a lot of people do it. Not worth making a fight about. Now, there is a fascinating tshuva from Rabbi Yisrael Yaakov Fisher, who was the Ravid of Yerushalayim on the Eid HaCharedis, where he strangely takes a position fakert. I would think that the majority of the evidence seems to indicate that this position that says square is the correct position. He takes a strong position fakert. And he has a very interesting way of getting there. He says like this. There's a Yerushalmi. He quotes this Yerushalmi. The Yerushalmi says, nothing natural is square. challenge you to find an exception. That's what Yerushalmi says. Nothing that Hashem created is square. Nature doesn't come in squares. Nature is always, the shapes. Nature's not square. There's no trees that are square. There's no rocks that are square. Things are not square. Ein merova bebriya. Now, how's this negeya? Is if someone makes a neder, it's a Gemara, it's a Yerushalmi Nedarim. What do you have square?
Nothing.
No. The Yerushalmi Nedarim says, someone makes a neder, Re'isi nachash kekeres beis habad. I saw a snake that had the dimensions of a beam of a house. Now, a beam of a house is squared off, right? It's unnaturally squared off. Re'isi nachash kekeres beis habad. It's a neder, it's an improper neder, brings a carbon right away. Because you zichar didn't see a snake. Even if you saw the biggest, green anaconda in the Amazon, that's, who knows how big, it's not kekeres beis habad. It's going to be rounded off, might have a flat bottom. And
nothing is a perfectly...
No, but even what appears to the eye, I'm not talking about microscopically square. Tefillin, lamashal, halachah mishpasina, tefillin has to be square, right? It's halachah mishpasina. But I can't actually be square. I'm asking you in the midbar, when they made tefillin, you think they had a hydraulic press and it was mamash square? No, square means square. But even that, there are some flowers like that come almost square. There are some flowers that were almost square. There are some seeds that were almost square. But this is he brings Yerushalmi. This is Yerushalmi in two different places that says this, Ein Meruvah B'Briya. So he says as follows. Let's do the math. The Mishnah in Pirkei Avos says that one of the 10 things that were created at our Shabbos Ben Hashmashas was the tablets for the Luchas. The Oisius weren't put on until later, but the tablets, HaKadosh Baruch Hu made the Luchas Rishonos on the Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmashas. Now, since if Hashem made in the Bria the Luchas, then he didn't make them square. Ein Meruvah B'Briya. There's nothing that's square in the Bria. So obviously they were rounded off. This is a Yisrael Yaakov Fisher's attempt at saying this. Now, says he, it's Yitachin, okay, take it or leave it. Yeah, it's not, this is what he says in this Yerushalmi. Now, others, Ding Zechan say that the Yerushalmi is only talking about creatures and things, not objects. Of course, Hashem could make an object square just like anybody else, meaning that's an object that Hashem's creating. It's not meaning the Yerushalmi at its face value means natural phenomenon or not square. It doesn't mean Hashem can't make anything square. Of course Hashem can make things square. Why can't he make things square? It means natural phenomenon don't present as square things. So the Yerushalmi is a shvacharaya. But now what's interesting to me is he says like this. He says it could be that the luchas shnius that Moshe Rabbeinu made were square. Because it says Ata p'say luchas shnei luchas habris, and the way the Gemara and the Zohar is describing it, and the way the Gemara and Babas is really describing the placement of the luchas shnius. Because the luchas shnius are shivrei luchas, they're already fully cracked. Right?
Are you saying they crafted the Aron based on?
No, the Aron was Hashem told them how to craft it, meaning, but the luchas that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, that Moshe Rabbeinu was making, were likely square. The way the Gemara describes them fitting in, they were likely square, because Moshe Rabbeinu made them square. Why shouldn't he have? That would be the proper way to do it. So it's Yitachin to say that the Luchas Rishonos were rounded, and the Luchas Shnius were square. So he says, maybe that's why people don't do square, but dafka. Maybe there's a reason not to do square, because square was the Luchas that Klal Yisrael actually had with them for hundreds of years, for thousands of years. So just like you don't recreate Kalim from the Mishkan, and you don't recreate the Ketores, even though it doesn't say this, there is no Issa that says this. Maybe Klal Yisrael felt like a certain sensitivity not to recreate the luchas accurately. I mean, just like we don't draw a picture of Moshe Rabbeinu, and we don't recreate a menorah, and you don't do those things. So maybe Klal Yisrael felt like a sensitivity. Don't recreate the luchas accurately. Recreate them like in a, artist depiction of the luchas. So we squared it, we rounded it off on top. So he says to Yisrael Yaakov, it's important. It should be rounded. It shouldn't be squared. This is his rationale to argue on this thing. Now, would come out l'chayra that there could be a difference between luchas shnius and shiyas. So some say that's why we do. Some say that that's why we do it like the way we do it: square on the bottom and round on top. Meaning, maybe when we say rounded, it was rounded off on top and on bottom. Why should it be just rounded off on top versus the bottom, rounded top and bottom? So we make a pshara. It's like the mezuzah. It's like the leaning mezuzah balachsin. Most shuls have rounded on top, square on bottom. It's like a pshara of these two days. Now, to me, it just struck me that he's coming out with, like, I guess I would call it a pseudo halachic nafkamina of how the luchas rishonos and luchas shnius is presented. Like lamashal, in Jewish thought, machshava, there's a lot of differences between luchas rishonos and luchas shnius. Like the luchas rishonos maybe according to some chazals. I'm trying to think. The Beis Halevi brings I think it's a medrash. The Beis Halevi in Drashis, and the end of Drashis, and the Chelik Beis Halevi brings a medrash. I think that says that Luchas Rishonos had all the Torah, Kol Torah Kula written in it. Meaning, when we say Afilu Masha Talmud Vasik Asad L'Chadash, anything that a Talmud Chacham at the end of the Darius is going to think up was included in the Luchas. The Luchas Rishonos actually had that on it. Like between the lines, everything was in there. As opposed to Luchas Shnius, were much more sassam. It only had the Torah. It only had the basic thing, and everything else. The Torah Shabbat Peh was all was Al Pi Meseira. So you see, like, and he builds a whole long machshava thought about that. I saw once the Netziv writes that Talmud Bavli and Talmud Yerushalmi are compared to Luchos Rishonos and Luchos Shnis. Says Talmud Yerushalmi came first for more chashav Ameroim, just like the Luchos Rishonos came first from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and still it didn't have the sticking power to get Klal Yisrael through Galus. Luchos Shnis, which is like Talmud Bavli, which came from a later generation and less, halig, so to speak, than Luchos Rishonos, is what Klal Yisrael needed to get into. Like, there's a lot of different drushim. So to me, it was just interesting that Rabbi Yaakov Fisher is kind of making like almost the halachic nafkamina in this, these thoughts. In any case, I think like Abish said in the beginning, it's, to me, Al Kapanim, not super integral one way or the other. You can do whatever you like, but it's just an idea.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.